Late May of 2015 was marked by a tense situation in the ATO zone. Militants in several areas challenged the Ukrainian defense units. Saboteurs mined roads and actively used drones to monitor the positions of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Despite the withdrawal of heavy weapons, the number of attacks in the Donetsk direction has increased. There were shootings outside the Donetsk airport almost every day. Russian media enhanced anti-Ukrainian rhetoric, and units of the Russian army with heavy armaments approached Donetsk from the border areas. You're watching the 55th series of the film about the ATO, History of the War. In 2014, the Russian Federation committed an act of armed aggression against Ukraine. The war has lasted for several years. We're following the course of this war, tracing the links between military operations, diplomacy, policy, and economy. We're trying to understand how it was, and most importantly, why. During hybrid confrontation, the quality of media coverage of military operations is no less important than their planning. While preparing the final assault of the Donetsk airport in January and the Debaltseve operation in February of 2015, Russian propagandists accused the Ukrainian side of breaching the truce. It is logical that planning the next intensification of hostilities, the Kremlin acted according to a well-prepared template in advance. Everything is relative. Ukrainian authorities in no way started the genocide of the local population that was promised by Russian propagandists. At the same time, popular support of militants in the occupied territories, along with the standard of living, was gradually decreasing. More and more people went to the Ukrainian-controlled territory to receive pensions and payments and simply buy food. Given the mining of roads and occasional shelling, the only relatively safe way to cross the demarcation line was through specially designated entry-exit points. But the work of checkpoints is directly dependent on observance of the truce. It's quite logical that during shelling it's impossible to cross the demarcation line. In an effort to discredit Ukraine in every way, militants periodically shelled checkpoints. This made people wait. This led to pandemonium, discontent, and in the end to conflict situations. While preparing an attack, any military leader seeks to deceive an enemy, to remit watchfulness, or to form a false idea of his plans. That is why, violating the truce, terrorists were active on several fronts at once. And by the theory of a hybrid war, they skillfully combined military and non-military actions. On August 28th, in the village of Luhansky, near the pension fund building, a rally was scheduled. At the meeting, activists planned to demand from the authorities the opening of pedestrian traffic across the destroyed bridge over the Seversky Donets River. However, the militants laid a radio-controlled landmine made of 120mm mortar mines and planned to activate them during this rally. Military counterintelligence service prevented this attack. On May 28th, Ukrainian positions in the town of Shirokine were attacked 9 times, 4 times with the use of 120mm mortars. As a result of shelling, 1 soldier of the National Guard was wounded by shrapnel. On the same day, in Verkhnotoretsky, Ukrainian soldiers engaged in a battle with tactical militant group that conducted intelligence in Toretsk. As a result of the battle, the enemy stopped performing its task and retreated. Then, near the Donetsk airport, 2 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in the battles for the village of Pisky and Vodyane. Another fighter died in Volnovaha. On the same day, the 28th so-called humanitarian convoy entered Ukraine from Russia. 100 trucks delivered about 1,000 tons of various goods. Considering the fact that 3 humanitarian convoys were sent in May, the intense activity of terrorists came as no surprise. Shelling of front-line strongholds during positional confrontation became commonplace. The names of key defense points as Renitne, Krimske, and Novotoshkivske were constantly in the daily reports of the ATO headquarters, as they were attacked on a daily basis. The developed system of bunkers was well protected from shelling, but on May 30th, in Troitske, in the battle with the enemy, the 17th Brigade lost one of its soldiers. On the last spring day of 2015, the Ukrainian army lost 6 people. The Svitlodarsk Bulge and Troitsky reaped a bloody harvest. As a result of a mine, one soldier of the Azov regiment was fatally wounded in Shirokine. In the village of Slavne, in the Marinka rayon, a group of Russian saboteurs attacked an Ural truck of the 28th Brigade. As a result, 2 soldiers were killed, 2 were seriously injured, and another 2 were captured. 2 days later, the situation in Marinka became aggravated. On the night of June 3, 2015, the positions of the 2nd Battalion of the 28th Brigade were first shelled from mortars and then attacked by infantry supported by several tanks. Parallel to these actions, as a deceptive maneuver, 2 groups of militants tried to penetrate the rear of the Ukrainian troops in the town of Shastya, but they retreated under fire. In Marinka, understanding that the advance of the Russian-backed militants was a provocation, Ukrainian soldiers initially did not open fire, but not responding to the warnings after 2 a.m., the militants reached the direct hit points and opened fire with all possible weapons. The offensive began. The Ukrainian command sent in advance the necessary reserves, tanks and artillery to Marinka. The OSCE office, the Joint Center for Control and Coordination of the Ceasefire regime, and the Russian General Headquarters were also informed about the attack. This means that in addition to the military reaction to militants' behavior, the Ukrainian side also took all the necessary diplomatic measures. At around 4 a.m., Ukrainian positions were shelled with Grad missiles and tank rounds. By deploying an offensive, the terrorists attempted to surround Marinka. In response to these actions, the Ukrainian side also pulled tanks and artillery to the front, which according to the Minsk agreements was pulled out. Closer to the afternoon, Ukrainian soldiers captured a Russian soldier, who informed about 500 Russian professional servicemen involved in the storming of Marinka. In total, up to 1,000 soldiers and up to 30 tanks took part in the assault. In addition to the mortars and multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, cannonry also supported those who attacked. But there is an important tactical nuance in the fact of superior enemy forces that sought to surround the Ukrainian positions. Marinka defenders retreated. However, this maneuver was not an escape. Within 15 hours, after regrouping, the Ukrainian army, supported by the reserve and artillery, launched a powerful counterattack. The enemy was forced out from the occupied positions. Until the evening, militants attacked twice, but failed. On June 3rd, repelling an attack by militants in the Svitlodarsk Bulge, the 30th Brigade lost a soldier. In the battles for Marinka, 5 soldiers were killed. 10 militants were killed as well, including 4 soldiers of the Russian Central Intelligence Directorate. About 80 terrorists were wounded. This was confirmed by radio-intercepted data and the reports of pro-Ukrainian staff of Donetsk hospitals. The next day, battles in Marinka continued, and by the middle of the day, the Ukrainian military forced the enemy to retreat. After suffering casualties, Russian terrorists requested a truce. The Ukrainians agreed, but some militant units continued shelling the Ukrainian positions. The terrorists calmed down only after the representative of the Ukrainian Armed Forces personally contacted General of the Russian Army, Lentsov, and threatened to destroy all previously explored targets with artillery fire. An hour after the ceasefire, the Ukrainian military began cleansing Marinka of stray militants and saboteurs. On June 4th, 3 Ukrainian soldiers were wounded in the battles of Marinka. On the night of June 5th, between the settlements of Alexandrovka and Peremoha, a reconnaissance and sabotage group of terrorists attempted to infiltrate the rear of Ukrainian troops. Another group of militants was found between Krasnohorivka and Marinka, so the terrorists had to retreat in the battle with Ukrainian forces. The status quo was restored, militants failed to achieve their goals, and the Battle of Marinka was over. But to understand who was winner, it's necessary to compare the results of the battle with the original plan of the operation, which in a hybrid war is more complex than the seizure of territories. As mentioned several times, the Russian-backed militants tried to push the Ukrainian troops away from the capital of their puppet republic to control it and the Donetsk airport. This would have left the way open for Russian aviation in the Donbass airspace. Also, the militants planned to break through the front to get to the operational space and to advance towards Volnovakha, with the aim of seizing Krasnohorivka after Marinka and disengaging transport connections. This in turn would have shut down the functioning of several strategic enterprises in the east of Ukraine and dealt a serious blow to Ukraine's economy. After all, war is very costly. The second factor was the mass retirement of those veterans involved in the first 3 waves of mobilization. During the process of replacement of personnel, the army lost soldiers with combat experience, so it is quite logical that the combat power decreased. In the case of a breakthrough at the front line, the command had to quickly close the hole in the defense using untrained people, which would have led to more losses, tension in the country, and enhanced pro-Russian views. The third element was diplomacy. Successes of the Russian-backed militants could have strengthened the Russian position at the upcoming G7 summit and at meetings in the European Security Council. Russian diplomats pursued a specific goal: to make Ukraine not recognize Russia as the initiator of the conflict, rather the militants with whom it is necessary to directly negotiate. In the end, this would have led to the recognition of the falsely self-proclaimed republics of Luhansk and Donetsk as independent states. But the plans of the Russian command fell apart when it faced the Ukrainian army. The fact of preparation for an offensive was uncovered in time by the Ukrainian intelligence, which allowed to prepare the reserves and devise a general plan for counteracting the enemy in advance. Facing an organized and skillfully planned defense, the militants could not effectively maneuver. Withdrawal of the frontline Ukrainian positions literally pulled the enemy under the blow of Ukrainian artillery. The latter arrived on time to the battlefield and fired, constantly maneuvering, which did not allow the enemy artillery to counter the batteries. In the militant camp, the command of troops was disrupted, which was facilitated by the work of the Russian electronic warfare equipment. This disorder led to major losses from friendly fire. As a result, the enemy forces were literally crushed. A few days after the battle, radio interception and intelligence helped to detect the total number of dead militants. The losses of the Russian-backed militants in the battles for Marinka amounted to 156. However, the exact number of fatalities of Russian professional servicemen was not detected. As early as May 28, 2015, Russian President Vladimir Putin classified the losses of the Russian Armed Forces.
Они врут. Никаких вооруженных сил, никаких инструкторов российских.
As of the beginning of 2019, the offensive in Marinka was the last major operation of the pro-Russian forces in the Donbass. The war was not over. There were fierce battles, shelling and casualties, but since the summer of 2015, the hybrid war frontline only moved eastward.